Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome once again to the 9th Annual Short Circuit Pacific Rim Film Festival, broadcasting live on YouTube, our Filmmaker Q&As. My name is David Geis, Executive Director of CineVic Society of Independent Filmmakers. CineVic acknowledges and respects the long history of the Lekwungen-speaking people now known as the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, as well as the Wasanich First Nation, on whose traditional and unceded territory we carry out our filmmaking activities. The colonial name for this region is Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, and our headquarters is in the city of Victoria. CineVic is an artist-run society supporting independent filmmakers and media artists with accessible programming, affordable equipment, professional development resources, and cinematic exhibition opportunities since 1991. Short Circuit is our annual showcase of short films from over 30 countries around the Pacific Rim. This year is our biggest festival ever, with 50 films streaming on demand until May 31st. Many, many filmmaker Q&As. If you missed any of those from last week, you can still watch the recordings on YouTube. And for the locals in Victoria, we've got an outdoor mini cinema running all the films 24/7 in Odeon Alley. We're proud to be setting a new standard of sharing ticket sales equally with all of our filmmakers. So please help us spread the word, buy your tickets, and support artists around the world. Check out all the festival info and get your tickets at shortcircuitfilmfestival.com. Tonight, also, we have the 5th edition of our CineSpark script pitch production program with the live pitch event coming up at 7 p.m. Pacific time tonight, also on YouTube. This year's top 5 screenwriters will pitch their short film ideas to a panel of judges, and one winner will walk away with a production package of cash, equipment, and resources valued at over $17,500. Speaking of money, a big thank you to our funders: Canada Council for the Arts, BC Arts Council, Province of British Columbia, CRD Art Service, and Telefilm Canada. So yes, this year we're broadcasting our Filmmaker Q&As live on YouTube. So if you're out there watching, please type your questions into the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. Please also include the name of the filmmaker to whom you're directing your question. If you don't see the chat box around you somewhere, make sure you click the live chat or show chat button, and be aware that your question and screen name may be selected to appear on screen. And of course, the recording of this video will stay up on YouTube after we're done, so please help us by liking, subscribing, and sharing this video. Alrighty, now to introduce our moderator for today's Q&A, Daniel Hogg, coming to us also from Victoria. Daniel is a producer, screenwriter, and story editor who works in both live action and animation and teaches film and media production at the University of Victoria. Most recently, he produced the feature-length animated fantasy action adventure Es Luna, The Crown of Babylon. He's also a very diligent CineVic member and volunteer, which is why he's here today. Thanks for tuning in, Dan, and take it away.
Thanks, David. So here we are, animated and analog Q&A. It was a real pleasure to watch this program this year, I think, because the tone and the range of the stories and styles and explorations is just so incredibly diverse and constantly surprising. And every film, for me at least, managed to evoke like a very different emotional response. So I'm really curious to chat with some of the filmmakers about this. And a lot of them are available to join us today. They come from as far as California, Washington, Fiji, and of course right here in BC. So we split them up into 2 groups. We had so many filmmakers. And so I'd like to start by introducing you to Ailín Ó Dálaigh, who's right here in Victoria, BC. He's a photographer and filmmaker, graduate student of Slavic Studies at the University of Victoria, aka UVic, who researches early Soviet cinema. The aesthetics of Soviet film during the 20s and 30s inform his filmic style, and he works primarily with 8mm and Super 8, as well as some 16mm film. And his film, Oneirologue, did I get that right?
Oneirologue.
Oneirologue. Yeah, the emphasis on the syllable, is a remembrance of a dream occurring in June of 2020, and composed of original footage as well as refilmed found footage, and presents the impression of a mind plagued by cinematic images and subconscious impulses. And I'll introduce you to the other filmmakers as well. We'll circle back for some questions. Next we have Tamir Rawlings, aka Tams, or Rollins, or T, man of many nicknames.
Whatever's easiest, sure.
Live from New Mexico, right?
Yeah, I'm actually in a place called Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, named after a game show.
God, I'd love that. I want to look there. And sorry, where am I here? But you're not from New Mexico originally, right?
I am not. I'm actually from Montana, so I grew up pretty close to the border. I go to Fernie a lot. Go to Calgary, all that. So I was pretty familiar with that area. I just now travel a lot. So
right,
New Mexico's just the name of the game this week.
And so I understand you were brought up on a steady diet of sci-fi, fantasy, and slasher films from the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Forbidden late night TV.
Yeah, I forgot what I wrote.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it turns out
that's true for sure. Yeah.
For an animation program, if you grew up with Ren and Stimpy, you got into South Park later on, and it says also shows like Jackass and Wonder Shows and now teaching high school film and serves as director of youth programming at the Santa Fe Film Festival. Together with it's Bradley, right? Bradley Oliver, Wilkinson-Vega, you created Rhino and Bird, which is a short film, a symbiotic relationship between a parasitic bird and a grumpy rhino stuck together in Africa's open plains. And the film's about their family kinships going back generations and bringing them to this modern day discussion of family grooming, disease, and survival.
Wow. I didn't write that, but that's good.
Yeah, I think that probably wrote itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you so much for Rhino and Bird.
Thank you.
Wow. We'll get to some questions on that in a moment. But we do have one other filmmaker with us in this session. This is 19-year-old filmmaker Conor Madill from Richmond, BC. Hi, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. I love that background. Is that over a window? It's backlighting it?
No, I've got like a little plant thing.
Oh.
You can grow plants, and it's my lighthouse thing.
I see. Okay, so Conor, inspired by a wealth of film, literature, and personal experience, wrote and animated the stop-motion film Ben's Room during COVID-19 lockdown as a love letter and goodbye to childhood, in which, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, it's about a toy wandering sort of a long forgotten crawl space in search of its missing piece, which I'm also so curious to talk more about, being just having grown up on Lego and imagined.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
There are still missing pieces in my mother's house. I'm certain of it.
Yeah.
But terrific. Thank you so much. So
thank you for having me.
Those are filmmakers with us right now. Please type your questions in the chat if you've got them. Otherwise, we're going to pick it up with Ailín again, and just a couple specific questions about your film. And I mean, is there anything you wanted to say about it that you didn't say already in the recorded intro for the film?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So it was essentially, the film is kind of a direct transmission from my subconscious. I was at the time, it was made in the middle of the last summer during the pandemic. And at the time I was working pretty much exclusively 5 a.m. shifts, 5 days a week in a grocery store produce department, which was like doing really strange things to my mind. I like being up so early frequently and not getting a lot of sleep. I would often like not know what I did on certain days, or like remember who I had told something to pretty much constantly. And so, and then being in the middle of the pandemic as well, most of what I was doing in my free time was watching like Columbia noir films and like really like low budget 50s, 40s, 60s, Poverty Row, like B picture horror movies and sci-fi movies. And I was also helping teach a course on the history of vampires. And so I had all these things going on in my mind as I was working this job. And then I had this really strange dream one evening. And I woke up in the middle of the night and half asleep, I just typed into my phone
what had happened in the dream, and then went back to bed, and then woke up the next day and decided I was going to turn that into a short film using whatever I could at the time, because there's all the restrictions on productions. So I pretty much just shot it all myself using whatever like film reels I had here at home that I could project and re-record, or sections from other things, and going out. My partner happened to be out of town at the time, so I was able to use their vehicle and drive around Lower Vancouver Island and go to places to film certain things that I normally would not be able to do, or would take me much more time or effort without a vehicle. So I just kind of threw it together, much like the dream was thrown together, in like a day or two, and then had the film processed and scanned and edited it. It was all shot on 16 millimeter on a Russian Krasnogorsk 3 camera that I bought a few years ago while in Russia. So that's kind of just like how the film became. And I think that's very important to, I guess, what it is, being a transmission from my subconscious.
Wow. Thank you. How much of the film, so you shot on 16, the stuff that you shot, were you also, when you were projecting films that you had and recording those, was that also captured with 16 millimeter on your end?
Yes. So the whole thing was shot 16 millimeter, but some of the projected stuff, or like one of the examples, I have an old World War II newsreel on 8 millimeter film that I projected onto the wall and re-recorded, and then other stuff. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 things from there that were digital projections that then I re-recorded onto 16, but everything was recorded at some point onto 16 millimeter.
Right, and the process, because there are some sort of like illusion of effects, and so I was wondering, like, if that was done in projector, like manipulating the.
That's so the intent was to make it look in projector, what's playing back looks like a projector that is not playing back properly. The film is like loose inside of it. But how I did that actually was I purposefully loaded the camera wrong. I knew I wanted it to look not super crisp and clear because it's a dream. So when I was loading the camera, I removed this sort of like, I can't remember the exact name, but like essentially when you're loading it, you've got the different little like buffers or restraints on each end that make sure that this film isn't going to bounce around in the film gate as it's coming through. And I didn't use those. I just stuck it through with my hands so that I knew it wouldn't be sitting, like each image wouldn't be recording perfectly. It would kind of jump as it hit the film gate going through every single time, and that way it would be an unstable image. And it ended up being a lot more unstable than I had actually planned. I thought it would just jump a little bit. So that was kind of a bit of a surprise, but I think it worked well.
Yeah,
or I hope it did.
When I saw that happen, I was like, I gotta know how they did that. And
yeah, that's just loading the camera around. That's all that is.
Yeah. Oh, cool. There are other experimental films that try to recreate or reference or reflect dreams, and I'm wondering if the techniques that you used were meant to sort of accurately reflect your dream, or if it was just sort of inspired by it, or if it was filtering it some ways. You tried to remember it and communicate it.
Yeah, some parts are accurate. Like at the beginning, there's some like refilmed footage from some like Universal Horrors pictures. I think there's like a shot maybe of Boris Karloff as Frankenstein and Bela Lugosi as Dracula in there, and those were like directly in my dream, as well as the final shot from Douglas. I think it's Douglas Sirk's Shockproof. Or it may not be Sirk actually, but the film Shockproof. It's a Columbia noir. The lead actress in that at the end, she was directly in my dream as well. And then there's other parts where I had to kind of just figure out something because I couldn't remember the images. And so I've like sort of tried to create a recreation of what might have been in the dream based off of what I had written down.
That's so interesting because I mean, also the way that, like, when any filmmaker starts approaching the film, I don't know how many people have like a really clear idea of what they want the film to be in like a visual way. I know sometimes people are just reaching out to sort of tell a story that they want to tell, and so it's sort of interesting to hear about how, how just sort of if it's what you pictured, or if you didn't know what you pictured, and how successful you feel it was in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm kind of like the opposite of the people you mentioned. I'm very visual, and I struggle with story. Like, I sit down to write something, and I'm like, look, I know what I want to see. The story is almost just like an accompaniment to the visual image for me, which I think is the opposite for a lot of people. I've always, like, even when I'm working on, like, I've had a script I've been working on for a long time now, and I have accompanying the script like a shot list that describes every single shot already before I've even, and the shot list kind of comes before some of the moments. Like, I have certain things in my mind that I want to work a whole scene around just a certain shot, and so I have to, how do I get to that shot? And I have to come up with the other shots, and then the story exists to get me to those shots.
Oh, well, thanks so much. I'll introduce or go back to another filmmaker and come back to you in a bit. But right now I've got a couple of questions for Conor, actually, and Ben's room, because the film, first of all, like, looks great for early work from an emerging filmmaker, and is this, so just off the bat, is this your first film or first animated film, or?
It's my first animated film. I shot a short film 2 years ago now.
Okay, cool. And so obviously first time working with stop motion as well.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about shooting that? Because there were a couple of live action elements that were maybe still shot and reduced, like the frame rate lowered or something to make it fit in more. But also, if you could talk a little bit also about the shallow focus in the overall look. Like, sometimes I was almost wondering if there was tilt shifting going on with the lenses, or if it was just creative use of macro lens and foreground, background, and all that.
That's a really great question. Thank you for asking that. I actually, one of my first big ventures into photography or filmmaking was with a old, crappy little film camera that I had gotten my hands on for, I think it was a birthday present. And it came with a couple really old, crappy lenses with macro filters. So they're not macro lenses. It's just these crappy little macro filters that I strapped on there. And that's the look of the film. Like, I just love that, how it's not perfect. It's not perfectly a macro thing, but it's just personal enough that it's kind of beautiful. But regarding shooting that, it was pretty much me and a couple of those macro filters in my parents' house, shooting, all at night for 8 or 9 hours a day for 2 months. It was pretty crazy. It was pretty intense. Incredible experience.
And I mean, animation seems like the perfect way to make a film without any dialogue. Is this, like, is that a preference you have as a filmmaker, or did you want, like, did you see this as a silent story from the get-go, and how did the lack of dialogue kind of influence your storytelling?
Yeah, I actually, we cut, there's about 2 minutes of the film that is completely cut that used to have 2 fully speaking dialogue scenes, and it just didn't work. It's just not, it wasn't right for the film. I'm also, obviously, I just don't have access to, like, pro actors and pro sound equipment, and it's like, it was just so much more powerful without it, that it was the right choice to get rid of it. It's all animated, it's all there, I have it. It's just, it wasn't right.
Right. They say you have to kill your darlings.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's good to not get overly attached and overly sentimental about the work as you're doing it, because otherwise those are really tough decisions to make. but I mean, the film itself is about sentiment in a certain sense, right? Like there's this loss of the Lego figure, you know, physically losing a piece of himself and doesn't know where it's gone. And other images like the height marks on the wall. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you perceived the story being about a goodbye to childhood and a love letter to childhood. Walking that line of melancholy at the same time.
Well, it's pretty meta too, in that I was kind of playing with Lego while going, well, this is my goodbye to playing with Lego, you know? So a little bit of hypocrisy there, kind of, but I feel like that was the goodbye. So for me personally, making it was the goodbye, but the movie is about someone losing something, someone having something and getting rid of it and dealing with that. So yeah, it all kind of came together really nicely with what I wanted to say and how I was feeling, and spending all this time making this film and literally playing with Lego. Like as a kid, that would be all I would do, really, because I just loved. I would sit on the staircase and tell stories with them, and it was where all this came from, where all of my passion for it came from. So it was totally. I couldn't have planned that, or that's just beyond me. I can't put words to that, but it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, well, it worked out.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
God, thank you.
Let's. I'll now come over to Tamir with a couple of questions. And talk about Rhino and Bird, and I don't know. This is a collaboration, of course, between you and Bradley. So I'm curious to know, first of all, just in terms of the collaboration and how that went. If you're based in different places, and this was produced during COVID, is that right?
No, well,
no, or was it before?
It was actually put into competition during COVID, but we sort of started to hone our remote process more during COVID. But this actually was done remotely, like how we've been doing it during COVID, how a lot of people have been doing work like this that was probably a year or so before. So, you know, they kind of take a while. And as far as my collaboration, like my portion is I wrote and recorded, you know, the voices. They're both me. So Rhino and Bird are both me, and I'm, you know, it kind of got a little weird. It's like it was supposed to be this sort of like, you know, a cartoon, right? And then it gets kind of extremely you know, philosophical or like heavy and existential. And like, you know, the more I listen to it and the more kind of we've been working on some more episodes of Rhino and Bird, which I think we're going to call it R&B from now on. So it's like kind of this love story implied, you know, the two rhythm and blues kind of deal. But plus Bradley and I are both big fans of like D'Angelo and that scene, the 90s R&B scene. Yeah, it was kind of became like listening to like the conversations in my own head, which is like I'm familiar with, but not everybody else is. So you're like going to this place that's supposed to be kind of funny and removed from yourself, but then actually it's like, you know, it's pointing directly at your subconscious. So it's like having the grumpy, easily annoyed version of myself that can appear in the early mornings as Rhino, and then like the annoying, you know, kind of over-involved version of me that's the Bird. So it's become like this a bit of an insightful, almost therapeutic process. But I record it, you know, I write it, and then I pretty much send it away, and Bradley just takes it from there. So some editing happens where we take some chunks out, and then he will add there's a lot of little flashbacks and fantasy sequences, and people kind of like little, you know, almost kind of mental breakdown, hallucination sort of sequences and things. So he adds all that and obviously all the characterization to the voices. So it's really a bummer he's not here, because he's like the guy, you know. He makes it happen. It's sort of more from my brain initially as an idea. I'm more of the conceptual ideas guy, and then he makes it, you know. He brought that really great, you know, kind of early Nickelodeon look, and which we're both big fans of, you know. And some of the stuff you said in the intro about what we kind of grew up being inspired by, it was pretty funny at the intro. You're like, you know, Wonder shows and Jackass and all these things, and then it's like, and you also teach high school and are the, you know, director of programming. And I was kind of like, yeah, that was a little question.
Teachers grew up. All teachers come from somewhere. They're all, your parents were real people at your age too.
Right. Totally.
It's so interesting that you say that there's kind of a therapy session for yourself, like writing and recording these characters, because I mean, the voices are so distinct. And I think one of the great things about the choice of the animation is that it really lets us focus on these characters and their perspectives, and really be with them in the moment of this philosophical discussion. Like, I think any more added in terms of backgrounds or making it you know, sort of flashier would just sort of distract from the purpose and like the essence, the quintessence of the film.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's such an honor, honestly, to be with you guys in the session, because it's like, for us, it's really you know, I make feature films, and I teach film, and I'm aware of a deeper cinematic qualities, right? But the more we do this, the more it becomes this kind of lo-fi thing, and we keep saying, oh, I'm going to re-record it. And, you know, I always, like, honestly, for a long time, really didn't believe in Rhino and Bird, and was really kind of down on it, because I just didn't think the voices and I didn't think it was enough, you know. And then when he added the animation, it came to life, and I was like, we're going to re-record it. We're going to do it again with real actors. And you know, like, I was really just super neurotic about it. And then he was like, no, it's actually, you know, it's already in festivals, it's released, it's in the world. There's nothing you can do about it. So, you know, I had to accept it. But it was like, it's a great process, because you forget about it. You get to leave it for like almost, you know, a month at a time sometimes, and then come back, and you're like, wow, I forgot that line happened. Or he'll make a line more potent, or, you know, that it became this kind of profound thing that I thought was dumb, and I was sort of ready to dismiss. Is really it's cool, because people have connected in that more, you know, in a deeper way to what the characters are talking about, not like what I'm saying or what I'm doing with the film. But I think that's what's so great about animated characters, is they can be, it could be like a toothbrush, and you're just like, you love this guy, you care about this, you know, this character. And
I mean, the dialogue feels so effortless and natural between these characters. I know that's unlikely to be true of the creative process, and I'm wondering how much, once you're delivering, you know, your draft of the script and your draft of the voices to Bradley, how, like, does a lot of time pass before you get to see anything? Is he editing and rearranging things for you as far as the dialogue goes? And how collaborative is that part of the process?
In the beginning, I really tried to, and we've been really like honing this process. We're working on a more feature length animated project, which is involving a lot of rotoscoping, which is, I actually get to film these things and create a real film, and then he animates it, you know, essentially over the top of it, like a lot of films,
like Waking Life, and
yeah, exactly,
yeah,
or
Dark
Fire and Ice or something like that. And so we've been experimenting with that. I just shoot it on my phone. It's like straight from the hip. It can be anyone. It can be, you know, it can be literally anyone and anywhere. And I can make this scene, or I can make this involved, like, you know, shot that goes all around the room, or all this stuff, and it, it looks like a couple of, idiots running around with an iPhone, and then it turns into like, the thief and the cobbler looking stuff, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, I've fallen in love with animation. I've come full circle. When I was like, 7, I started off doing a lot of stuff with Legos and a lot of things with animation, and got more involved in live action in film school. And now I've come all the way back, even more so with COVID, because there's just the dangers of collaboration or disease, so it's like it's just the perfect art form in a lot of ways for telling a story, and just how you can make the character larger than life. You can make a character, like a Lego, emote this quality that you could never really get out of an actor, and you could never maybe record with the crispness or the control and the lighting or the color or the all of that. So
yeah, I mean, I think and maybe this is something that everyone can talk about in the room, but how animation also just in its nature, whether it's with objects or drawings, it's always going to be stuff that sort of invites the viewer to bring their own experiences to it and to bring their own emotions to it. And I'm wondering, I guess this is a question for all the filmmakers. So I don't know quite how we moderate this, but how do you feel? Like, because when we watch something as filmmakers, we're seeing the film, we're bringing our own thing to it, and then other audience members are going to get their own reactions, their own emotional response. But as far as what you're going for as an emotional response and trying to get something from the audience, like, how much are you thinking about that as you're making these films, and how much are you trying to imbue your own emotional response to the work as you're making it? Does that make sense?
I think so.
Do you guys want to take a crack at that one? For me,
yeah. Sorry,
for me, especially with stop motion, that's kind of the whole name of the game, is imbuing your own, how you would perceive that, how you would act in there, trying to somehow squeeze that into the little tiny figure. So totally, that was for me, it was a big part of making Ben's Room.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. Like, there's the that's all you've got, really, is the frame, is the one shot at a time, really, to tell your story. So in animation especially, I mean, like, you can have that control, especially, I mean, I see in your work, Connor, like the great control in lighting and sound that you can have, and then, like, in contrast, you got these wild animal actors running around and stuff, and, like, you can hear the refrigerator, and it's just like, nightmare after nightmare sometimes. And so, like, the process in animation becomes so clear, like, you have that real, like, in editing, you're seeing really plainly just the image and then the sound, and how that's the story, even without sound, just the face or the change in lighting or tone, So I definitely think we're like the first audience member, we're the first person to see the thing when we're making it. So if you don't have that response, like, wow, this is something I would watch, I want to continue watching, then you're kind of you're screwed.
Yeah, Tamir pretty much nailed it right there with you are the first audience member, so you're trying to recreate your own mood and emotion that you think that, like, when it's in your head you have, and then trying to put that back onto the screen. It's almost like, I feel, because in a way for me it feels like I'm not concerned with the audience's response, but I'm concerned with recreating my own response. So I'm almost like an autocrat behind the camera trying to, like, force this onto the viewer, but hopefully it works.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that with the recreating and re-filming and like redistributing the vision over, so many times can really, like, you can kill it. Like I was saying, kind of re-recording and making like the radio play of Rhino and Bird. That was it. That was like, it was this contained nugget that Bradley found funny enough to animate for like a year, and I was just felt bad for him, and then basically later it's like I'm saying we'll re-record it and we'll change it, we'll cut this part out, and it never happened. It had to be kind of what it was. And so the more you kind of, I think you try to chase it, you can really just lose sight of like what you were doing. You can make it about something else, or make it about the audience, and make it less of a that expression. Maybe I don't think it may have gone deeper for me than just some dumb animation. If I hadn't spent the time with it and been like, wow, this is actually some heavy shit, that they're talking about.
Well, with animation, I mean, part of creating that experience that maybe the casual viewer doesn't realize, but like 100% of the audio has to be created for the animation, right? There's nothing else there. So whether it's just the dialogue, like I don't recall in Rhino and Bird if there's anything outside of the dialogue, but in Ben's room, there's music. I think it was from the planets, if I'm correct. But also like selected sound effects that you've either recorded or sourced, and obviously, Alan, you're narrating, right, the dream to a certain extent, and other soundscape elements that are in there. So like how are you considering the sound and trying to marry it with the picture in a way that sort of enhances that engagement and reaction from the audience?
Yeah, well, for me, like, I'm shooting on silent cameras, of course. And so when I was making the sound, I knew the sort of rhythm. I had a juxtapose or like interrelationship between the rhythm of the actual like montage happening and the rhythm of the narration that I was going to record. And I knew I wanted the narration to be at a certain speed, but I also knew that the images had to come at their own rhythm and play off of each other in a way that wasn't just the most boring thing you've ever seen in your life. And so I was having to go in and essentially like create, while I was editing, essentially I would play back my rough cuts and just perform my narration over it until I thought I had the edit of the actual film right. And then I went in and did the recording, and I nailed it on the first try because I'd been doing it that way the whole time. And then when I was doing the other sound effects, I was actually, because I have these, like we mentioned earlier, with the sort of like jumpy image that looks like a malfunctioning projector, I decided I actually wanted to record the sound of the projector, and that's the sound you have in the background over the narration, kind of, as well as the music, which is a sort of like chopped up Toscanini composer, like not composer, but directing a Wagner piece. So I kind of chopped that up and added that as an under like sort of public domain soundtrack thing going. And then I've got the sound of the projector running to sort of start up the film as if it's like you are sitting there watching this projector malfunction.
Cool. Yeah, Conor, do you want to talk a bit about the process of your sound and bringing that to life?
It is so hard. I can't even, Tamir, I've, like, both of you guys, seriously, it's so hard taking something that doesn't have sound and inventing the sound. It's incredible. For me, it was just, I really wanted it to not feel like super animated. Like, I wanted to have that kind of visceral, a little bit more, I don't know, tactile, real thing going. So it was just a long process of going through like tons and tons and tons of royalty-free sound effects and recording stuff and pulling things from other things. And it's probably one of the hardest parts of the whole animation process. It's just figuring out, because it could go in so many different directions. It could be super cartoony, or it could be too real, or it could be too actiony, or whatever. It's intense.
So just finding something that like matched not just your idea of it, but like just fit, right? It needs to working in animation. I've often talked with the director I'm working with, like that it needs to stick to the film, right? Like and even the voices, right? So the fact that Tamir, like your voices stick to both the characters, even though they was performed before they were drawn,
right?
Is kind of like a small miracle by itself. But maybe with animals, we had bring less of a preconception as to how they would sound. I mean, did you find that, Conor, with your deleted footage that the voices were sticking to the characters? Or
that was one of the reasons we got rid of them, is because they just didn't mesh with it. There was like this like a doomsday, the end is nigh kind of guy about like, you know, they're gonna get rid of all the Lego kind of thing. Didn't stick. It just wasn't the voice. It just didn't match. It wasn't. And that's why I brought up with Tamir. Like that's just, I can't even imagine how well you guys had to do to get that right, and it works so well. I'm so impressed.
Thanks, man. Incredible. Yeah, no, it's the same deal. I wish there was a secret or something, but because I would use it. But it's really the feeling, right? Like it's all we do is follow the feeling that we started with, or if it's not right, you just kind of keep altering it. Or we did things like, you know, that the music needs it, we'd reverse it or something, you know. And he does a lot of the music, and we've, you know, since done more optical layers and things to make it more kind of experimental and more kind of like a like this sort of a lo-fi, and really bringing that like doing TV frames and sort of like glitchy tape stuff and things like that we, you know, have since really committed to, because it works so much better to be committed in that aesthetic or whatever that world is, and know that like these sound effects fit in this kind of music, and having sort of theme music or sound effects that are stuck to like Daniel's saying, that stick to a character, you know, and that you're kind of consistent. Like when you hear this you know, this sound effect, you know that it's Rhino, you know, pooping or whatever he's doing.
Whatever rhinos do. Great. Well, I mean, do you guys, you've all seen each other's films. Do you have questions for each other, or comments? Anything you were curious about we haven't covered yet?
How long on average, Conor? I've never done stop motion before. I know it's painstaking. How long on average, like how long do you work to get however much usable footage when you were making this?
Ooh, it was usually, I think the film's about 8 minutes long. I think it was usually about 7 or 8 hours for like 30 seconds or less. Like I was working from like 8 to 4 in the morning.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still more than Michael Bay reportedly gets on some days.
Yeah, no actors. It's like
yeah.
Yay!
Yeah.
Love it.
So what's next for everyone? What are you working on now, Tamir? You said you're doing more Rhino and Bird.
Yeah, it's kind of like this cheap. I feel kind of bad about it, honestly, because it's like I actually started just using the original footage from the first one and just revoicing it and like put together basically like a storyboard for Bradley, and he's just going to elaborate on it from there. But it's like it's just the original frames from the first one, because it's really just two characters talking. So I just kind of took the two frames, one with the mouth open and closed, and made a new couple of episodes, like, you know, cheap, like outsource, you know, to offshore, you know, kind of deal. But it worked, you know. If it works, it works. You know, I didn't think that people would actually like Rhino and Bird, so I'm thrilled. And I've been working on another sort of sci-fi anime comedy about the last Karen that's left, you know. So there's, in the future, it's like 2095, and no one names their daughter Karen anymore. So there's only one. There's one left, and yeah. So that's it.
It feels very timely.
Yeah.
Thanks. Alan, what's next for you?
I've actually been working on a short film since last May, so it's been a year now going. I just had at first I shot it all and then had the lab basically just fry my film when they were processing it, and so I had to do a reshoot, and I decided I was going to process it myself. And now I've got all that footage shot up and I've been editing it, and I just can't get the ending right. So I've been working on that for a while now. That's the next thing I'm working on. Otherwise, I'm kind of trying to take it easy. I'm moving across the country soon, so I'm trying to maybe save some money rather than spend all of my savings on putting together another film.
When you really quick side question, when you process yourself, that's for black and white, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I could do color at home, but it's a little more finicky. So
yeah, that's my understanding. Great. Well, good luck with finding your ending and your big move.
Thank you.
Conor, what's shaking with you?
Oh, I definitely need a break from working with little tiny plastic figures. So I'm looking to do a live action short this summer. Should be pretty interesting. I think it'll be.
Yeah, well, especially with how the restrictions are in Richmond.
Should things permit? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. And for your insights into your films and just the process in general. It's been always fascinating. And it's kind of fun to do like a Q&A that's not like 10 minutes at the end of the screening when the people are like, we got to clean up the popcorn before the next people come in. So yeah, thank you so much again for your time, and stick around if you like for the next Q&A. I think starts at 1:00. With the second half of the animated and analog program Filmmakers. So we'll see you soon.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So much,
Thank
man.
you.
Best of luck to you guys.
Take care, guys.
Yeah, take care.
Hey, Dan, and
hey.
everybody out there in TV land. We do actually have our entire second group ready to go, so we could just get started right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
If that's cool.
I'll have the sip of water.
Awesome. Okay. We'll just take a breather here, but yeah, everybody's ready. So feel free to get going with them.
Okay, and are all our anticipated guests here?
Yes, they are. Yeah, we never did get Anne-Marie from the first group, but that's okay.
Okay, great.
Probably busy making her next film. But yeah, everybody for the next group is here, waiting in the wings.
Great. Well, let's keep going with group 2 of animated and analog. First off, I'd like to introduce to you, so I haven't been able to talk to anybody to find out the correct pronunciation of their names yet. So here we go. I'd like to introduce from Fiji, Meli Tuqota Jr.
Yeah, close enough. It's pronounced Tungota. There's a little sort of like a hidden NG at the TU. So Tungota.
Okay. Thank you. And your father hails from Vanuatu, Fiji. Is that right? And mother from Hapi Tonga.
Hapai. Yeah.
Hapai. You have over 15 years experience with graphic design, motion design, 2D and 3D animation, and also drawing stick figures with both hands, which is maybe the coolest thing that somebody can be is somewhat ambidextrous. With
the quality varies.
Yeah. The choice of my parents. The film is based on a poem by Kunai Heli Taman.
Taman.
Taman. Musings of her arranged marriage laid bare over a series of traditional tapestries called Nugatu.
Ngatu,
Natu, sorry.
sort of like a NG. Ngatu.
Right. So through a series of chapters, her life is animated by her inner turmoil. She struggles to find her place as a woman in a new world. And the animation on this one is so cool. I'm really curious to dig into the process when we get to chat. But yeah, so that's Meli. Next, we have Peter Sandmark and Trace Nelson of Victoria. Hello. The Big Talk Collective is Trace Nelson and Peter Sandmark. Their media artworks combine gestural camera movements and hand painting on film, digitally transformed, layered, and abstracted. Trace is a multidisciplinary artist who lives on the unceded territory of the ʷəŋən peoples, creating works in visual art, media art, and music, and has exhibited her work in Canada, the US, and Europe. And over the last 28 years, has taught at Concordia University, the Vancouver Island School of Art, and the University of Victoria. Peter has been creating single-channel experimental films since 1978 and has taught filmmaking and film studies courses also at Concordia University, as well as the University of Victoria, and is currently the executive director for the Flux Media Gallery in Victoria. Their short, Bravas, is a short experimental film that began with images created by painting directly on 16mm celluloid, which was then transformed by editing and augmented digitally, or by digitally modified sounds captured from your day-to-day lives, right? Yes, that was the film. For those of you who've already watched the films, refreshing you, trying to marry the films with the filmmakers. And we'll catch up with you in just a few moments.
Sorry, I'm just gonna pop in here because I tried to unmute you, Peter, and it's telling me that you don't have a mic connected. So I'm just wondering if you can take a moment to try and get the sound working, and we'll kind of give you a few minutes to come back to you. But good luck.
And I'll wait on the thumbs up from David for that. Next, I'd like to introduce Vancouver media-based artist Herong Cube. Hello. Who studied at Emily Carr and is a passionate storyteller. Each form of art to her is a unique way to reach out to her audience as she diversifies her art practice into illustration, calligraphy, photography, performance crafting, and novel writing. That's a few more than a triple threat. And you created the film Green with, well, a lot of people, I know. You produced the film, right?
Yes, co-directed with my friend Glory, but she unfortunately couldn't be here today. Yeah.
Yeah, and to remind our audience, Green is about an illustration student who's trying to finish drawing after the loss of her friend, and in a journey of finding an inner settlement, the flashbacks, the memories have taken her back to the beginning of their tacit love. Yeah, so visually compelling. And I'd like to introduce also from California, Kyungwon Song. Did I say that?
Yeah. Yeah, it was, yeah. And then I moved back to Korea after the lockdown pandemic. So yeah,
okay.
based in Korea now. Yeah.
Based in yes, and Korean-born independent animator. Formerly based in Los Angeles, and her interests are in nonfiction animation, and the main medium is early film technique and stop motion. Her films have been shown internationally at numerous film festivals, including Busan International Film Festival, at Annecy, and Ann Arbor Visions du Real, 25 FPS Festival, and more. She directed a PSA for the Gender Equality Campaign of UN Women, He for She, and her latest film, Jesa, which you've seen now, won Best Women Director at Argo Untold Stories Short Film Awards, Public Jury Prize at Indiana Fest, and the Best Documentary Shorts at Indie Memphis Film Festival. She holds a BFA and MFA in experimental animation from the California Institute of the Arts and a BFA in East Asian traditional painting from Hong Ik University. Yes. And so the film Jesa is a Korean, well, Jesa itself is a Korean tradition honoring the ancestors. And the filmmaker interviewed her parents about this ritual tradition of Korea, but the conversation went down a bit of an unexpected path, I think. So yeah, those are our filmmakers in this session. If you have questions, please type them into the chat. And otherwise, we will get started. Let's go back to Meli. Hello again. You say in your video intro that this is your first animated film, even though you have so many years experience animating. So I was curious to know, what is it about this poem that sort of captured your interest and brought you to animating it, and why this one was sort of your first foray into that?
Thanks for that. Well, even though I've been in the industry, doing graphic design and animation, to be weirdly enough, I never really considered doing artwork for myself or like doing anything creatively, which is kind of weird, but it is what it was for me. And then lately, it's funny, but I just sort of had a realization that all these skills that I gathered over the years, or I learned, I can kind of try to apply for myself and do something cool for myself for once. And one of the first things that came to mind was trying to see what it would look like to animate the traditional cloth that Tongans use for their traditions and customs, which is called ngatu. To use that and to try and tell a story through it. And because it's Tongan, the poet who wrote the poem "You, the Choice of My Parents," she's Konai Heluthem, and she's also Tongan. So I thought it was only cool, it was only right to try and make an animated version of her poem using only the patterns and the texture from Tonga. Also, it is a way to sort of get more in touch into my Tongan side, to learn about the process of creation of how those things are created, the ngatu, and the motifs and the culture behind it. So it is that was one of the many reasons why I wanted to do that with the creation of my first animated short film.
Thank you. And this might be obvious to other animators, but for our audience and also me, because I'm so curious, how did you achieve so much texture with the flat images? Because it has the look of two-dimensional space, but were you actually animating on cloth in some cases, or is this largely like how did that process work as far as the animation and the hand painting and the all that came together? Because sometimes when I first started watching it, I was like, oh, okay, I think I know how no, that definitely can't be how like that process.
Well, actually, it was all on computer, but all the textures and the look of the motifs, they were all like I went to my mom's place over one weekend and just sat with her, and we went through all her ngatu collection, because with Pacific Island moms, those kind of things, they collect a lot of it, because the ngatu is used for mostly used for traditional ceremonies like deaths or weddings, and so she has quite a collection. So we'd sift through that, and she'd point out to me what this is and what this is for, and I'd take photos, reference photos, as well as like real close-up photos for the texture, and that was what I used as a basis of animating the short film. So I took those textures and motifs, and then I recreated it in After Effects. And from there, that's when I used all the, use that as a basis to create the short film.
Terrific. Thanks. Well, I'd like to get some questions in for Herong as well. The style and recognizing that there were so many people collaborating on this film, I guess I was first curious to hear a little bit about that process and how that was done, if it was done before the pandemic or if it was done during kind of remotely, and how you managed to get that together, because it's we have the full range of films, from like sole animator to crew of seemingly 30-40 people.
Yeah, that's a hard process. Okay, so originally we were not planning to have a big team because it was just a grad film. So it's only around like me and Glory as like the director, and then we're gonna find some of our juniors to help us with coloring and clean line, that sort of stuff. But then the pandemic happened, and our old team members are like, some of them are going back home, some of them are away from computers. So we weren't able to finish the film during that time. So I was like, oh no, what should I do? So I went online, and then I posted like somebody willing to volunteer, where we will pay like amount of money so they could help us with finishing the film. And that's how we got, like, in the credit, you see like around like 30 people working on this film. It's, yeah, that's how big it is.
Yeah. And I guess as producer, it's your job to be coordinating all that as well.
Yeah. We got team members like from Canada, China, Japan, and Spain. So basically different time zones. And I was like, especially when the time is closer to the due date, I was like running like 24 hours per day, like no sleep, to just keep everything in connected. Yeah.
That's wild. And when you had different people collaborating like that, was it some people are doing backgrounds, some people are doing line tracing, some people are doing coloring, or was it here's this shot, please do it, here's the style?
Okay, so we're trying to have all the people from one area doing one type of thing. So me and Glory in Vancouver, we are doing mostly the design and giving out the reference, that sort of stuff. And then the major group, which is in China, they are students. They are doing clean line coloring, and then we have our composer in Spain, and then the background designer in Japan. So we kind of managed to do it that way.
Wild. I mean, the style itself kind of stands out as something that we could easily see, broadcast on TV or in video games. And I'm wondering sort of what were the inspirations for that style, where that comes from, and if that's the style that you yourself usually work in, or a bit about that.
Yeah, the character design and like the visual design part are mostly done by Glory, so I don't have much to say about this, but I know that because we are living in Vancouver, there are a lot of great studios just around us. So as students, we got a chance to like walk into those studios and talk to the artists, and then we see their work, like directly we got inspired. And that's how, like, I wouldn't say this style is like pull out from one film. It's like a mixture of inspirations, and then we come up with this style of the film.
When you were making the film, and because I know Glory directed, but how do you feel the film like walking that line between sadness and joy, when it's, you know, a story of love and loss. How did you find walking that line when there's no dialogue, or essentially no dialogue in it, and trying to tell that story visually?
Well, to be honest, we planned to have dialogue in the first place. But then, due to the time, and then we're short on like money and sort of stuff, and we have to cut out the dialogue. But I guess the story still conveys by itself, because the picture and the image itself, so is the music, is doing a great job. So the story is complete in a sort of way. But I'm not sure, like till now, I'm not sure if it's better to add a dialogue or like without a dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, what were there any considerations when you made the decision to remove the dialogue? And like, were there any considerations into adjusting the story after that? Or was it just, yay, we don't have to draw mouth flaps? We're
Well, the dialogue part, we plan to have the two character talking, like basically introduce themselves of why they're in that hospital and all that stuff. But we literally find out, even we remove that, the story still completes. And then we didn't do much cuts because this change. And then, yeah, I guess it works.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And even, you know, when I was watching the film, I wasn't thinking of what the program description was. And, you know, I think it only took a handful of shots to start immediately understanding when she catches the book, and then sort of disappears again, to start understanding what the story was about, and the repetition of the book following. So yeah, it's really nice. But film is a visual medium, right? We don't talk about it as being an audio medium. So I'll see if Peter and Trace are here to talk a little bit about visual mediums.
Hi, how's it going, Dan? Can you hear us
good.
okay? Can you hear us fine?
Yep, I can hear you just great.
Hey, we want to start just by thanking CineVic and the Short Circuit Festival for putting this on. I think it's a great lineup. You have a lot of really great stuff this year. And we were honored to be in this package. We really enjoyed all the films in the program that our film is in. So thanks very much.
Thank you. So you described the film as a tour through an imaginary microscopic landscape. And with films that involve found footage and painting on film and all that, I'm always curious about how many of the images are intentional and how many are kind of happy accidents. And in terms of the selection, the editing process of doing that, how that comes together for you, if it's naturally, you know, from the beginning to the end, or are you starting to rearrange things and just experiment, see how that comes together?
It's totally experimental.
Totally experimental.
There are a lot of happy accidents.
Well, it's a lot of it's painted on film, right, originally. So it's hard to know what it's going to look like. And I think what we're doing with this technique we have is, sorry, I'll try and move the mic away here so there's less echo. Digital editing allows us to pick and choose the parts that we like and slow them down and transform them. So it's a kind of marriage of digital and analog, actually, in a way. So I don't know if you want to... Tracy's actually the one who does most of the painting on film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do most of the painting, and then we get together and edit the pieces together and transform them, and also make the soundtracks.
So this is special ink for film that you're using?
Yeah, it's an alcohol-based ink that we drop, in this case, directly onto the film.
So when you it's it's happy accidents or experiments, but at the same time we get to pick and choose the parts we like, and that's really a big part of this. That's why it's a collective, because we're working together and we go, that part works and we're going to put that in.
I mean, intentional or otherwise, there seems to be in this film kind of what felt to me like a natural, or maybe not natural, but a progression of the colors used, and as the film goes on, like it's sort of the palette offers certain colors and then sort of starts to focus on one or two, and then it drifts to another one. And I'm wondering if you're deliberately restricting yourself and thinking about the color as you're doing it. Obviously, there's probably limitation in terms of the paint that you need to use, but if there's a consideration in that as well.
Well, the process of making the painting on the film is that we have the films laid out on a long table, and we just have all our materials there, and then just experiment and make different marks and use different colors. And I was thinking that it would be nice to have longer sequences that kind of progress and are, using the similar colors and marks to, to make the pieces. So,
well, that came through. How do you find the mixing of the analog images and the digital sound? So I mean, obviously, the screening format these days is digital by and large. But would you rather be working entirely in analog, even with the sound, like the old Niagara tapes, and even with the screening itself? Like something about that medium and that tactile nature of film?
Well, it's pretty exciting all the parts of the process are pretty exciting. Like the actual painting and scratching and manipulating the film is really interesting process. But then when we get together and do the editing and the digital process, there's a lot of aha moments where we go, oh yeah, that works. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So that's where we kind of collaborate.
Yeah, I've been doing films since a long time, so it's hard to do. It's really hard now to do analog sound on 16mm prints. It's hard. There are very few places that do that anymore. But also, I think it's kind of great, this combination. We do get the analog look, or that's hard to duplicate in computers. I do recall though, like working with an optical printer and refilming 16mm film over and over and doing superimpositions and stuff. So that is something we can do digitally now, and it's opened up a lot of doors. So it's kind of, we're working with two sides of analog imagery, which is unique in its own way, and then with tools like digital tools. And even a lot of the sound is not synthetic, it's stuff we record, but then we alter it, like we slow it down quite often and mix it and loop it and things like that. So it's all creating, trying to evoke an emotional response for the audience.
Yeah, it's and I mean it's interesting you say that, because that's one of my questions, sort of for all the filmmakers afterwards, is talking about emotional response and intention and hope and all that. But we'll get back to that in a little bit. Thanks so much. I'd like to talk again with Kyungwon Song about Jesa, and because your synopsis mentions this conversation that goes down the unexpected path.
Yes.
Talking to your parents, and I mean, do you think that ultimately helped or changed what you were trying to achieve with the film when you originally started to work on this project?
Yes, I think so. So I originally planned to make like the now film is like a structure for like animation part for my mom talking, and then my live action performance for my dad part. But I originally planned like all the parts to be animated. So like for my dad part, like so male voice talk to me, direct me. for the ritual, and then like the image of the animation is kind of following sometimes, and like creating humor following it, and then sometimes like betraying it. So, but like I did an interview with my dad, and then he was, like trying to, teaching me like how to do it, like and then like he went to like on like a history, like a lesson about the ritual, and then like it was like more than an hour, and then I couldn't say anything. Like I told him that it's interview, but like he was like giving a lecture to me, and then I couldn't say anything. I just listening, and then like a zonda. And then I thought, oh my god, like I messed up, like it's done, like my project. And then but I thought that this kind of dynamic is more like, emphasize like what I wanna criticize in this, like my culture and then tradition, like young woman like want to talk about the society, something serious, but like old, like a kind of like me, like a guy, like keep like trying to mansplaining. So I thought, oh my god, I should use it. And then I think that unexpected, like interview really created interesting dynamic in my film. Yeah.
So the interview wasn't originally intended to be part of it. It was to facilitate the production.
Yeah. So like I asked him, like the both interviews started from the same like a question, like what's role, what is your role for the tradition, Jesa? And then like my dad like started teaching me, like a direct like a process of the like a Jesa, and then he went to like history part, like he never allowed me to talk, and then he just kept talking. Yeah, and then my mom was like a kind of keep like talking back to me, and then like some like a talk about something more like aesthetic of the food, and then talking about the like labor, like consuming that kind of process of the ritual. Yeah, so it was totally unexpected, but I think that created more, like I think that talks about like everything I wanna talk about, and then like the like kind of like a patriarchy, like a situation, like a like a dynamic of the like culture, thing.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that's definitely what it felt like. For
Yeah.
me, one of the moments that almost illustrated how it's a documentary or documentation, and as well as like a discussion on it, was the moment where your dad asks, what is this project for? Why am I asking you this? Why are you doing this?
Yeah. I explained him everything. This is gonna be my thesis film, and then I explained like pretty well, but he was like he was also tired, because we were like, I was in California at the time, and then he was in Seoul, like Korea, Jeju, and like we were talking through the like a video, like a Skype. So like he was teaching me, he was also not familiar with this kind of like a video chat, and then he was trying to like teach me watching just like a video. Yeah, just like, no, not there, just like here, like that. So like, yeah, it was like huge drama. The interview itself is like huge drama.
So the the footage, yeah, because I understood the Zoom interviews by the end of the film, right when they were revealed, was that top view, or like 45-degree view of the table of the ceremony? He was directing you live in that process?
No,
Or that was a recreation?
Like that was like that was recreation, because like I didn't expect it that I'm gonna use that that like in the footage, because I was doing research for like animating, like so I thought I'm gonna make it animation. So I'm trying to like just like a record, so that if I can find any like interesting dynamics in the like a live action performance with interview with him. And I thought I shouldn't make it animation. I think this should be animation and like live action, and then I should like recreate the like a ritual by myself. So I decided to like to recreate it, the like a whole part in studio with better setting. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, a lot of people, when they think of documentaries, assume they're going to be live action. When they hear animation, they assume it's going to be either like narrative fiction or something experimental. Can you talk a little bit about what draws you to the intersection of those two things? Because I know there's even festivals that are just about documentaries that are animated, like, or one of the biggest festivals, like the Dot Leipzig, is like both. They're like, we do documentary and animation, and bonus points if it's both of them. So, like, what do you find interesting about that and about telling your stories, nonfiction stories, in this way?
I don't know. Like, I'm a animation student. I was an animation student, but like I wasn't good at making fiction story, like storyboarding and everything. So and then I found like a nonfiction animation, kind of like something, yeah. And I found the nonfiction animation, and then I found that like it was a kind of like moment that, oh, animation don't need to be like a fiction and then like a drawing base. So I think that and then I thought that that's the like way I should go, I think. And then I like when I'm making like a film, I'm an animator, but like I'm thinking that I'm making a film. So and then like I think like some part, like I think it's up to the like subject and then concept. Like I kind of like it doesn't have to be everything to be animated. Like because I'm an animator, like some part, if it's gonna be effective and then conceptually fit to the like some kind of other medium, I'm kind of willing to, like navigate, like explore. So I think that kind of my mindset, like created kind of, like hybrid filmmaking, like things. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, nonfiction stories are still stories, right? They're stories that need to be told and want to be told, right?
Yeah, and then like people say that like is animated documentary is real documentary, like, but the like even though you're like making the live action documentary, you still have a process like editing, selecting the footage. Like it's also kind of like some kind of like abstraction is like going like a prison, like go to the like the film, and then like it's kind of not different, like photographic, like a photorealistic image, or like more abstract like drawing, or like like a sculpting kind of like thing, like kind of image. Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Yes.
talking about that. I'm wondering if we can get all the filmmakers back in the room, and just to talk a little bit, I touched on this before, but about evoking emotion from your audience, and sort of what you're thinking of when you're making the movie, in terms of what you hope your audience will both bring to the film and get from the film. If that's clear enough. Would anybody like to take a stab at that?
Oh, we changed our microphone. Is that okay? Can you hear us now?
Yeah. Yeah, you look like even more of a collective now.
We're a collective.
Yeah, we're attached.
Well, we had sort of prepared a talk, because in abstract art, like some artists had used music as an analogy, that music is non-representational, like if there's no lyrics or anything like that, and yet the audience has an emotional reaction. So we felt that the same could be true of colors and shapes. So we're trying something very abstract and hoping, and I think the soundtrack, of course, adds a mood and so on. But it is an abstract narrative.
We have some sort of sound coming from somewhere. There we go. Sorry, Peter.
Okay. It sounded like one of our films, actually.
Thank you. Herong, how about with Green? Because the project is rooted so much in emotion and yeah, in trying to evoke that response and telling an emotional story.
It is. The story, it's about like one of the character in the film. It's like in a serious illness, and she passed away. And when we made that film, like we only want to, like we didn't think that much, but as time goes, especially in this pandemic time, like there are people around us experiencing that the loss of their loved one. So that makes the film kind of like, it's like the real life is always more emotional than our recreations, I guess. And during the process, there are a lot of people helping us, like voluntarily. And I guess the meaning of this film, like their help is even greater than this meaning of the film. So yeah, when it comes to the meaning of this film, all I want to say is like we're really thankful for all the people that are giving us this help, and of course this film to let us show this film. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I even watching a story like that about connection and loss, I think we can't, as filmmakers, discount of what the audience will bring to the story themselves, right? And how it might make somebody feel about a situation that they had in their own lives, and touch people that way. So I'm always fascinated by what films can do for us for situations that we don't have personal experience with, but also for situations where we do. Meli, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about again, like that emotional landscape, both that you were hoping to achieve in the story, in telling that story of the poem, and sort of, yeah, if there's something specific that you're hoping the audience is taking away, or if there's a reaction that you've seen from the audience that was unexpected.
The poem that I animated, "You, the Choice of My Parents," in Fiji, it's a poem that started in high school. And so in my high school days, the few times that I did pay attention in English class, that poem stuck in my brain. And so over the years, it's funny, I didn't really think about it until when I decided to create an animation that that particular poem sort of surfaced. And I liked the poem because even though I have no experience with like the poem sort of talks about arranged marriage, I have no experience with that. I liked the quiet strength of the voice of the poem, and I wanted to try and capture that and invoke that the kind of quiet strength in the visuals as well. And so that was sort of the angle that I was going for. I will say though that once you create any piece of art, it's something very personal to you. But once you let it out into the world, it's up to the audience to interpret it as they will. And even though like I was coming at this vision or at this poem from a certain angle, I do realize that once it's out there, it's up to the rest of the world to interpret it. And so it has been an interesting journey to see the reaction of different people, especially from my corner of Fiji. We don't actually have a film festival per se, so the only outlet I have is to send it out overseas. And so it's interesting to see reactions from people around the world, other than the Pacific, who sort of reacted to this poem in interesting ways.
Well, the context is so interesting now that you said it's taught in high schools, because of course people can remember the poem and experience it in a new way. And I'm wondering if your experience of the poem changed in the process of creating the film from when you were paying attention in English class.
Tell my English teacher that. Because this is the lady who wrote the poem. She's kind of related to my mom, and so when I created the short film, I actually went to show it to her as sort of like a, hey, can you give your sort of stamp of approval on this? Not so much for anyone else, but for me personally as an artist, I wanted to make sure that the person whose work I was basing this on liked it as well. And I was very thankful that she was very happy to see her work on the big screen, because for her, she wrote that poem a long time ago. I think it was in the 70s, and she has seen the poem sort of have life over the years through high school, but she's never really seen it done in a sort of a way that like the way it was depicted on screen. And so she's very happy that it's taken on new life with that. So I'm just glad that she liked it. I think that was the first hurdle to overcome. After that, it's all smooth sailing.
Thanks. Kyungwon, with Jesu or Jesa, sorry, in that because I know or I suspect that the story was coming from sort of an investigation into the ceremony, but as far as the process of making the film goes and the emotion that you wanted to imbue it with, how did that reconcile for you? And yeah, no answer.
Sorry, I think I didn't understand the question.
Oh, sorry.
Can you prepare? Yeah.
So in telling the story about this tradition, and what you wanted to communicate with it, did the experience either change your emotional understanding, or in the process of making the film, the understanding that you wanted the audience to have and maybe react to? Did that, how did that work for you? So I think of stories very much as like emotional journeys, right? That we're trying to relate our experience, and so I don't know.
I think
what
that
your tradition is coming into the film.
Yeah, I started criticize the tradition, and then the patriarchy, the perspective of the tradition. But as I'm making it, it's kind of my emotion has changed it, and I thought I don't know, it's getting more complicated for me as a and then I thought this whole film process should be my chance to rethink about it, and then kind of reclaim my power as a female, a female of the tradition. And I try to open my thought to the tradition and then everything. I don't know if it was answer for the question. Sorry, it's 5 a.m. in Seoul, so I'm also sorry, please understand me.
No, you definitely you're definitely on the same track that I was looking for.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's interesting to hear that maybe your understanding and relationship with the tradition evolved over the process of making the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much. I guess we have an opportunity, if any of you have questions for each other, having seen the films. I always like to give 7 seconds because it takes that much time to think about, oh, that's the question. Oh, is he really asking me? Should I come up with an answer? Yeah.
Oh, I
Okay,
got one.
maybe I'll, okay, he's still waiting. I'll ask my question.
I actually got one for Herong Cube for the short film Green.
See, works every time.
Well, it took me more than 7 seconds, but I'm working my way towards it. I wanted to ask about I was really interested about the way that the short film during the course of telling its story used a lot of quick cuts to very you have the full screen and then the ratio would change to like was it 16:9, and then in between you'd have these quick shots of like really like just the box of a focus frame, and initially I thought that it was like it served as sort of chapter headings. I was like, oh, okay, this is like a beginning of this is like a creative way to signal that this is a new chapter in the story. But then over time, then it actually switched to more just like close-ups of interesting things that help tell the story. So I wanted to know, how did you come up with that process of using that very interesting way to frame certain visuals in a very defined way to help tell your story?
So this all started with the idea that like was one talk with me and Glory, and we thought about like the way we're gonna show a flashback is like how memory flashback in our mind. Is it like sometimes you have some image in your mind, you know it, but it's not clear. But when it's on screen, you have to be like it's a drawn image, so it gotta be clear, like a clear image. But how would you make that like same as a memory? So we thought about reduce the size of the image and make it like show on the screen like really short of time. So it like flash, and then you sort of see it, and then your eye sort of capture it, but then you don't remember like clearly how it looks like. And as the film goes, the image goes like larger and larger, more to the close up, and that's how like we want that audience to like have the similar feeling of the main character, like she's getting more clear about this memory that she had. Hope that answered your question.
It does, thanks.
That's so cool. Yeah, I noticed that they were more prevalent as the film went on. But yeah, it makes so much sense when you explain it, which of course dreams never do. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming to discuss your films and philosophies, and for being part of the festival. We hope to see your work again. And yeah, that's kind of all, folks. Tune in to more live streams next week. We're catching up with recordings of the previous Q&As and other films in their programs if you haven't seen them yet. And you can check out all the festival info at shortcircuitfilmfestival.com. Yeah, thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.